case, the types of business cases. So let's look at a couple of examples. In the first example, you can see, you can probably already tell, and if you've worked with me, you know, that's too much information. I think I might be able to find the whys out of it, but somebody's just done a verbal dump. I want all this fixed. I want everything done. That's just too big, and we'll talk about how we can do it. I do like the fact that there's a lot of numbers. I do like that, but I just don't, I can't figure out what the project is. So I would sit down with the sponsor or the process owner, and let's figure out what's the most important of these. Now, this may have been jotted down on a post-it note on a B&E matrix. Understand, but we can strip it apart and get to where we want to go. I don't want to clean those. I don't want to clean this up initially. I want to do that later. So if this was what was written on a post-it note, well, let's take it down and let's clean it up after we've decided to write a charter for it. And that's true for all four of these examples. Now, the second one's a little bit better. We want to save $100,000 in wages at a service center by eliminating a service representative. Oops, I don't like that. Are you sure you're overstaffed? I'm guessing that's probably not the case. And then we want to increase sales from the service center solicitations by $2 million because everybody's going to be happy after you fire people through proper training of supervisors and representatives. Again, probably not. There's a project there. I actually see two projects there. So we'll break that apart in a second too. And the third example, losing sales because lines are out of capacity. We want to purchase 2 more machines to increase capacity. Again, something typical that I will see on a benefit effort matrix on a post-it note. Now, I would say I think you're jumping to a solution there, but let's see. We'll talk about that again. And then the last is sales out of a flagship shop are down 18% because of a new layout. Employees haven't been trained properly. Again, I'm not disgusted at this going on a post-it note, but this does not belong on the business case of a Lean Six Sigma charter. So let's improve them a little bit. For example, market share has decreased in that first one by 1.5% in the last quarter. That's the simplified version of all those words that were in that first paragraph. Our Y, our big business Y, is market share with his worth yearly margin dollars of $1.5 million. Now you know when you're working on it? If you go back to the previous slide, right, now I know what we're working on, why we're working on it. And the second one I said I thought there were 2 projects. Cost of running the service center was over budget by $100,000 last year. My big Y is service center costs. It's not people. We got too many people we got to fire. Well, let's not do that yet. Let's say that we're over budget by $100,000. Or I think better, our service center budgeted sales are going to be $2 million next year. So Y is equal to service center sales. And it's easy. Now we know what we're working on. It's not both of them in the same project, though. Those are 2 different projects. Let's split them apart. And on a B&E matrix, you may split those 2 apart and say one of them is easier to do than the other. I would do that one first. I'd re-put that back on the B&E matrix. Third example, we're losing sales of $10,000 per month. Again, sales lost. Not trying to say what it is. I'm saying this is what we're working on. We've got a sales leakage problem. Same thing on the second one. Sales at a flagship shop are down 18% over the last 6 months. Y is equal to shop sales. Doesn't that make it a lot clearer what each one of them or what each project is for? We don't want verbiage. Verbiage just confuses. Let's write down the transfer function as it starts, and then we're off to a good start on the project. All right, the next part, now again, that's the business case. The next part's the opportunity statement. Sometimes this part starts before the business case. Sometimes, and in fact, I'll tell you the one that's like that in this last one. Sometimes we'll actually see the opportunity statement and realize that there's a business case for it. Typically, 75% of projects start out with the business case because we don't really know what the process problem is. Sometimes we do know what the process problem is, but we don't know what the business case is. That's what we're hashing out when we write a project chart. So the opportunity statement contains information that allows us to know what is going wrong in the process that's causing us the specifics of the particular problem. It describes pain in the process or cost to people. It identifies issues. What is exactly occurring? You know, we got customer complaints because things are late. when did the problem opportunity statement is if I got an idea of what one of the X's is, I'll go ahead and list those out, but I will call them out as X's. So here's again a definition of what, or an example of the opportunity statements from the previous examples that had the business cases. So stockouts have required 37% increase backovers in the last 6 months. Now, if you go back to the original slide, that information was there. It was just in the wrong place. But remember, it was loss of revenue. That's the big Y. I don't mind restating the big Y. And then the little y, the function y, the transfer function begins, is stockouts. So the thing that I want to measure in my process is the number of stockouts I have. Realizing there may be other things that lead to loss of revenue, but the one we're focusing on is stockouts. And then we say we have more information. Over half the back orders have been canceled by customers. What happens then? Well, that's the revenue loss, right? Interestingly as well, inventory has increased over the last 6 months. That's a potential X. Maybe it's inventory's the problem. And planning reports have been late and are inaccurate, and those are potential X's. Don't mind putting them on there. I don't want to say they're the cause, but I don't mind saying they might be potential X's, and I call them out. In the second example, again, there's probably 2 different business cases, and in the second business case, one project may be one type or the other. But again, the easy way is the overtime hours have increased over the last 2 months at the service center. We know what the Y is, right? We know the costs have gone up. This one we did a little bit of investigation and saw that overtime costs it up. So Y is equal to service center costs, and that's a function of, among other things, overtime hours, and that's how we're going to measure success. We're going to see if overtime hours go down. But if we really want sales, that was the second half of that project, that's why these 2 projects had to be broken out, the current process needs to be improved to generate more revenue. So we got a process to generate revenue, but it's not very good. So what we're saying is, again, big Y, service center sales, not cost, is a function of opportunity generation, amongst other things. Now, it also may be you don't have a process. So this time we say there is currently no process to increase sales in the service center next year. The process needs to be developed to generate 20 sales per month and convert 75% of sales opportunities. And that's a little bit specific, but that's because this project becomes what we call a Design for Six Sigma project, or a DMAIC, Define, Measure, Explore, Design, and Implement. We'll talk about that on another section of the channel much later than now. And then the last 2, current cell capacity is 80% of needed to supply customers. So again, for this one, it's sales loss, and it's process capacity that's leading to it. And the last one, again, sales are off, but it's at a flagship shop. We've got more detail. The shop was upgraded 6 months ago. Customer complaints have increased 300% since the upgrade, and 75% of those were about time to check out. So now our big Y, sales loss, little y, checkout complaints. Now, again, in the other one we said training. I don't like to put training on because training is so specific. Now, it may be that there's a lack of knowledge, in which case training is the solution. I will say that was not the case in this particular example, even though everybody wanted to retrain everybody. Well, when they did the upgrade, they trained people. That was not the root cause. It's got to be training. No, it wasn't. So we learn things as we go along, but that's not the example here. So that's the first 2. Those are the 2 major points in our charter. We want to know why we're working on something and what's the process why. Remember, we're converting the business problem into a process problem. It's hard to fix a business problem if we don't know what the process problem is. We're just throwing solutions on the board. We want to figure out what the process problem is and then drill down to root cause it. So next week, we'll finish up the charter, and then we'll give you some hints and activities to do to make sure that your charters are the best. Again, if you like it, hit the like button and think about subscribing. Again, we'll see you.